Hello, everyone, and welcome. As mentioned last time we met, so my name is Alexius. I will be the chair of the Kent Union Parliament meetings. And as I said previously, I'm very excited to work with everyone. Briefly, just because today we have a few very important topics on the agenda, so let's aim to keep it simple. We want to give everyone an equal amount of time for everyone to get their point out there, and yes. Also, I encourage everyone to be vocal and provide their opinion on the issues. Before we start, have we received any apologies?
No, we haven't. No.
Okay, so that's on the record. We haven't received any. And also the minutes from the previous meeting. So can I have a show of hands to be approved of the minutes from the previous meeting?
Sorry. Can we have a quorum check before we do any official votes? Sorry.
Yes.
I believe we are, but it's just good for it to be on the record.
We've just had another person join as well.
Hi, it's Ntete. Sorry, I'm joining late.
No problem at all. Thank you for joining. Yeah, we're just going to quickly go through checks to make sure we've reached quorum. So. Yeah, we have 17, and we are waiting Noor, who will arrive shortly. But their lecture's finished at 6, so we will have another member arriving shortly. But yeah, we're all good to go and vote on things, and yeah, be a part of them.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. With that being said, let's move on to the.
We do the revote again.
Oh yeah. So can I have a show of hands again for if we approve on the minutes from the previous meeting? Perfect. Thank you.
We have a choice.
Yeah.
11 minutes.
So now let's move on to the UCU strikes, and I'll have they come up and I'll quickly say also that we allocated 30 minutes on that, so let's try and keep that in mind with 30 minutes.
One that got sent to Parliament. Then.
Yes, we'll try to put it on the screen. I hope everyone's had a look at it. If it's been sent to you, we'll get it up on the screen for this one.
We'll just be able to get it up here.
There you go. Yeah. So, as you all may be aware, UCU have taken a stance to carry out industrial action. As said in the paper, the vote for strike action was 81.1% towards yes, and the turnout was 57.8%, and that was a national ballot. So nationally, UCU are taking industrial action. They've announced the first round of strike action, so that will take place from the 24th, 25th, and then the 30th of November. And action short of strike will start on the 23rd, which is from tomorrow onwards. And the action short of strike includes working exclusively minimum contracted hours, removing uploaded materials, not rescheduling lectures or classes, refusing to cover staff absences, and not undertaking any voluntary activities. This can also include a marketing assessment boycott. Now, this will disrupt student experience, student education, but we have gone out there to consult students on their feelings through strike forums and consultation on the plaza. If we move down a bit to our lovely little pie charts created by Daniel. This is the data that we've collected. So 70% of students that we collect data from support the cause and the action. 27% support the cause but not the strike action, and 3% do not support the cause for the action. And there was a breakdown by division as well. The bigger divisions like NAS did have obviously a bigger turnout in that sense. I hope everyone's kind of seen this. Now, at Kent Union Parliament. So within our bylaws, the bylaw for deciding our songs comes to Kent Union Parliament, and we present all this information, we have a discussion, and then at the end, we take a vote on whether we will support the strike action, and if that's our stance as Kent Union as a body, or whether we choose not to support it. There in the paper as well, as you would have seen, there are two different kind of pages, one for the support statement and one for the not in support statement. You guys have seen that as well. I kind of wanted to just give it out to the floor if you guys wanted to have any comments or anything around that. Who wants to go first? No? And come on.
So 70% support it or not?
Yes.
Okay.
The center of the students we collect data from.
I know it says that the sample size isn't large enough to be considered like truly reflective, but how many votes were actually taken on the sample? Do we know?
So
I'll explain. So that was for students that basically were opposed. There weren't that many on the survey, so therefore it wasn't to do a breakdown per division. We didn't really have enough to do breakdown divisions, but there was a sample. The sample for overall getting opinions was I'd say large enough to accurately gauge opinions.
What was the number of samples taken?
So it's just under 100 in total.
Leo, I would also like to very clearly point out that some divisions and some schools may face more kind of intense strike action compared to the rest. It is not, it isn't university wide. Like there are specific pockets of UCU members who will be taking industrial action. So depending on the groups that you represent, I will take that into account as well. I don't know if you guys have any feedback that you've heard from students and people you represent.
Mine's just an anecdotal comment, I suppose, instead of feedback. I think generally because we get to vote on each particular strike action if we want to support it. And for this particular one, given that it's across 3 days, and what they're striking for, I feel is very valid. I think to me, if we've got the 70% of admittedly a reasonable sample size, but also it's good enough for me to want to back it, especially since some of our PGR students will also be involved in that.
I guess just for more information, the meme page, which I know might always be the rightness, but it's a good way to engage the disengaged. You might not follow traditional platforms. They did a poll and 214 said they support the cause and the action. We saw 153 say they support the cause and not the action. 28 say they don't support the cause or the action, and 111 who had no idea what it was about. So that's just a bit more information for you just to help with your decision making, I guess.
So for me, the area, the 27 said that support the cause but not the action. I think that they find themselves in a very difficult place because, of course, who doesn't want the people that are educating us and teaching us and giving so much to us as students to be paid fairly and to work, workloads that are not causing a disturbance to the mental health or to other activities in their lives, because obviously as students we know that being at university is only a small part of our lives and have so many other things that we're involved with and that take up so much of our kind of headspace. And I'm just echoing what the statement that says not in support says, is that students have gone through so much, and when we think about it, students have 3 years, 3 very unique years of their lives that they're never going to get back, they're never going to be repeated, and they are being caught in the middle of this fight from academics and other staff members at the university as well. And I think that that's what that percentage represents, is that of course we want this to we want our teachers and the people that support us at the university to be treated fairly and to have good working conditions, but at the same time we need to recognize that it's not students' fault that this is happening, and a lot of students feel really cheated and they feel like the teaching quality it's not what they paid for, and they feel like they're not getting value for money. And I think that that's a very important thing to keep at the back of your mind, is that we have gone through so much as students, and we have gone through several years where there has been disruption to our studies, and how fair is that? And particularly thinking this year, since it is a national vote, whether we support it at Kent or not, and whether changes get made from the university at Kent towards the treatment of their staff, and not only staff, but also PGTs and hourly paid lecturers, is that unless these things get changed on a national scale, then we will see no end to the action. Whereas in previous years, because it was a local ballot, when things got resolved locally, we would see that action stop. That's not going to be the case this year. So that's another very important thing to also keep in mind when you guys are voting as well.
Thank you, Faye. I'll go to Megan first.
Yeah, I had the privilege of doing an article on the upcoming strike action for Empire, and I asked sort of pool of students, you know, I only got like 15 or so responses, but the majority of them, they said that they supported the cause, but they didn't support the action. Just, you know, sort of mirror what you said, you know, it's like, we have gone through so much. This has been an incredibly unique situation the past few years, you know, with COVID and, you know, that causing like massive disruption anyway. And it seems that for some students, they kind of feel that their sympathies for the cause are sort of starting to wear thin a bit. I mean, one of my classmates, because we speak about it in the group chat, you know, and they said, like, I support them, but there's a point where you have to be selfish, and I'm getting into a ton of debt for what? Like, not gonna lie, it's got to the point where I don't care what the union says about it because it's still going to happen. So I very much agree with the cause. I really want them to have like fair wages. I want the staff to do so much for us to get looked after, but also I'm noticing that there is dissatisfaction, and you know, there is sort of like this sense of anger and upset.
Thank you, Megan. Just to quickly point out as well, as something Lucas said earlier as well, that this is a national fight, and it is on the basis of the main things are the 4 fights and then the USS pensions. And the USS is this University Superannuation Scheme, and that is their pension scheme nationally, and that is a whole specific body that deals with it, right? So what they're challenging is that body and its evaluation of their pensions. So that isn't something that one university can have an influence on, it's a whole array of things. What UCU has said is that our Vice Chancellor, Karen Cox, sits on the Universities UK board, and she has influence on that, but we do also have to point out that the USS is separate to the University UK. They are its own entity as well. So I would keep that in mind as well. Regina? No? Nicholas?
Yeah, so I just have a point about the graphs, and like, I understand it's hard to create them. But if you have, and this is not like critique, I'm just pointing out that like if you have a sample of 100 people, it might not be representative. It sends us some information that not like 99% agree or disagree. But I would like to point out that even though 70% agree, it's just, it might be the case that you've selected the wrong sample. So what I'm trying to say that when you deciding whether to support or not support, like deviating from what this graph is saying is okay.
Go on the basis of what you've heard from the
Yeah, and second point, like one thing is to say, okay, we agree or disagree as a communion, but maybe if we can more explore what we can do in terms of like supporting the students, you know, like going to the causes.
100%. Just a quick answer to that. Then in our support statement, do you guys want to come on with that?
It's about the sample stuff.
Okay, so in our support statement, it does state that if we do vote to support it, the Sabbatical officers will be, you know, helping out UCU in their picket lines, in the marches, but it is also something that we as Parliament members, as student representatives, should also be supporting it. If we do vote to support it, that's our responsibility as student representatives to actually be out there and helping students out as well in that representation. I know I can't ask you guys to do that, but that's something to keep in mind. If you do vote to support it, do show out for your lecturers and your teaching staff. It's really important. Okay.
Yeah, just from the sample, because I feel like numbers alone can be a little bit misleading. It says that they don't tell you the full story. Just to add like more context to it as well. since we were out there speaking with students, getting this data in, quite a lot of them that I spoke to personally were first year, so they are people that haven't had the experience, that might not be as fed up as other students might feel. If you speak to a third year that's been through 1 year entirely online, and then second year with a lot of disruption, half online, half in person, then now getting back to normal, where you feel like, okay, maybe I can take a breath and, you know, I'll be able to have a final normal year, then those students might be more frustrated than a first year might be. So that also kind of skewed the sample as well, people that have never experienced it before, so they don't really know kind of what stakes are there.
Councillor Lily?
I was just gonna make your point of what it means for us to support and what it means for us not to support, and just what it would look like to students if we have members of parliament out there with the lecturers that are striking, whether that would be conflict to what students think, whether how, if they are actually getting support.
I'll go to Lulu in the middle.
So a lot of the people who I spoke to, like in my current classes, because it inevitably came up anyway, when teachers said, and they don't have to say, the lecturers don't have to say if they're going to strike, but the majority of our lecturers have been like, we are striking. You can consider this week null and void. They are children.
Not chatting.
Not that. So basically,
Put that in the pins.
yeah, so what was, oh yeah, so basically like most of us are saying that we do really understand and support it, because one of our lecturers actually took time out to say, this is what's happening and this is why, and she told us about how like basically they have decided that her pension contributions will be going up hugely, but what she's actually going to get back from that when she's older is actually going down, which means she is essentially paying the people at the top of the food chain to take her pension. It's like paying taxes when you don't get anything back, because our national insurance goes to the NHS, like on our payslips, our national insurance goes to the NHS. It goes to like council tax goes to fund your council. And this is just going, she doesn't honestly know where, except in someone else's pocket. And then she did say how like it is important for all of us, because she's striking so that our generation's rights are going to be more protected, because this affects not just teaching. And so we have to understand the long-term implications. However, when I've been speaking to the students who are in my year, I haven't spoken to any first years, to be honest with you, but people who are in my year or the year above, or the people who have now left, everyone that I know is pretty much saying like at the beginning of the year they supported it, by the end of the year not so much. And I think a big turnaround for that was the marking boycott. I think that's when people went like missed lectures they can catch up on because they've got the reading materials, or they've got like lecture notes or whatever, or like the lecturer may go over it. So like a couple of missed lectures here and there we could deal with, because let's be honest, a lot of us do that when we're hungover anyway. But what really upset people was the marking boycott, because a lot of people felt last year that they were going to leave with an unfair grade, and it meant that all of the progress and all of the hard work that they'd done, they felt was going to be disadvantaged. So like, if we're voting to support or not support, I'll be allowed to say like, we will support some actions, but not others.
So right now, we're just voting on supporting on our stance on this particular round of strike action.
And a marking boycott is not included in this round of industrial action. You see, you have said that they may include it in industrial action next year, but the industrial action that we are voting on today does not include a marking boycott.
Sorry, I think I might got that confused.
So right now,
It does include
action.
actions,
It does, yeah.
which is a lot of other things that also are really detrimental. You know, the assessment marking boycott, it was just a very big thing because it's also a very sensational topic as well. To be told, oh, you're going to graduate and your degree is going to be worthless. Obviously, that's going to stir a lot of people up.
A lot of false information.
Yeah, there was a lot of misinformation, but also, you know, getting your materials removed from Moodle and then never getting them uploaded back. I've spoken to students that said, well, I had a very interesting specific topic this 1 week. I'm never going to be able to explore that topic that I was really interested in because I missed that lecture and the stuff had been, I'm talking about a student from last year, and then all the stuff got taken out, so they couldn't even access the learning materials afterwards to engage with it in their own time. So it does have a different impact, but like Seb was saying, this time around is the action short strike that doesn't include assessment monthly boycott and 3 days of strikes.
Carolina and then Jazz. And then
Obviously, having gone through it last year, I'm just curious, and I'm sure we'll never know the answer to this, but we supported like 2 or 3 rounds of strikes. And I'm wondering if the UCU then got confident enough to go and put up the assessment boycott, knowing that we've been supporting them throughout the year and probably assuming that we would support them again for that, whether we, contribute to their confidence that this is going to work. And I'm just a little bit wary that if we start supporting strikes now, they might think that we might, at some point later in the year, also support some of their more drastic and, detrimental actions like an assessment boycott.
I'm correct. Last year, for the monthly assessment boycott period, we voted not in support.
Yeah, but they might have thought that we were going to vote in support as we've been supporting all of their other actions during the year.
Thank you for that. Can we go first?
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I come from this from a very different point, the PGR viewpoint. I also took surveys, also got like Megan didn't get many responses, like 15, but not it hasn't been unanimous, to be honest with you guys. But most of it has been in support of the strikes from the postgraduate research perspective. A lot of issues like Lou's mentioned, pension erosion, that they feel like the university is running vanity projects rather than actually supporting the staff. But I also had other issues that I did want to raise up, which like I think Lupe made a good point, which is that this is a national issue. So I think that transparency needs to be made obvious. It feels like we can't do something, and that's something that the Deputy Vice Chancellor also said, we can't do something alone in Kent. Regarding the USS scheme as well, I just wanted to point out that back in 2020, UCU and UK have agreed on something, but it was the USS that kind of said, no, we don't agree with this. That's number 2. I also have a question about this idea. Okay, if it's a national issue, then can't we, I mean, we're still part of NUS, there was a recent referendum, can't we have some leverage against NUS to kind of do some campaigns? Because I know they are supporting the strikes, but I don't know what they're doing on a national scale to support students. So I think, and of course, with the NUS conference coming up, and there are going to be delegates there, so I think it's an important issue we should be raising. I also think we should be having clear guidelines from Kent Union about what to do, because the Deputy Vice Chancellor at the Student Forum said, oh, students can't be striking. Yes,
there is specific laws around picket lines.
But I think that's the thing, like, I think you can join and support, but you can't actually be an official picket. Yeah. But I think we should be having that clear to students from the very beginning, because otherwise, like the students who are going to be supporting mostly PGR, as I assume, need to have that guide, because like that kind of scared me when the DEC said that. Yeah. And the last point that I kind of want to make is just that there's been a lot of rhetoric about this idea, supporting the cause, not the action. And I'm just curious about what that actually means. I'm sorry. I just feel like what does that actually mean? Support the cause, not the action. Like how far are you willing to support it? And what would students recommend we do instead of striking? And I'm just genuinely curious.
Just coming up on the point on the picket line stuff. Luke has made some really good videos explaining what strike action is, how it goes, what's going to happen, and what students can do, and on our strike forum page as well online on the Kent Union website.
And we're holding a masterclass tomorrow where all student reps have been invited to kind of hear some tips and advice on how to support the strikes if they choose to, but not only the strikes, but how to support other classmates and other students that might feel different to you. How to separate your own views from the person that you're representing's views. But yeah, we're trying to do as much as we can, and that's one of the things that we do as Kent Union, is that whether we support or not, we want to make sure that we're putting out complete, unbiased information, and supporting students as much as we can, because we wouldn't want any students sympathy for the strikes and industrial action to put them in a place where they get negatively affected to like a bigger extent, and so we'll make sure to include that information.
On the priorities on the students.
Yeah, and then the point, I guess, when you say I support the cause but not the action, is kind of what I was saying earlier. Is of course I want people to have good employment rights, but you have to separate it a little bit as well, and in that sense, be slightly, I don't want to say selfish in the negative way, but selfish in the sense of protecting your own interest and protecting your own time, your own investment, because coming to university is an investment. And of course, students will want to protect the investment that they've made coming here. And I think that is the main point is, I think it comes from a place of misunderstanding of what do you expect us as students to do? Like, yeah, we'll say we support it, for example, but what does that mean? What will that change? What would that achieve? And is it going to benefit me? Am I going to get back what I've lost? Or is it just going to be benefiting other people? And I guess that's where the selfish aspect comes in.
Yes.
Well, I guess kind of coming off of in support of students, I felt like last year, I remember the uni, I don't know if this was from the uni or from the union, the response for basically students lost was the compensation. But the lowest tier of students who are still people who lost multiple weeks, like for me, I lost multiple weeks of my studies. The compensation was a free drink. And I think for a lot of students, they felt like the uni was basically taking this and was like, oh, here's this, when in reality, this is like actual hundreds of dollars of loss for a lot of students individually, who for like one or all of their classes could have missed like up to like a month or two of lectures and seminars. And the compensation that they got was just simply completely inadequate. And I feel like if we support this time, which I personally feel like we like kind of piggyback on, I don't remember, but Lou's point, the teachers were striking for like the next generation of like, you know, yeah, I feel like they have a right to strike and to get fair pay. And that as a union, we should support that. But for the students, they need more support from us and from the union than they got last year.
Go Lupe and Megan.
Yeah, I guess it's just the, oh,
Right.
close to the kids.
I was just saying 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
put forward a procedural motion to extend the time of the committee? Like 1 more minute?
Yeah, to extend the time, we need to get any proposals for, and if there is one against, and then it needs to be a 2/3 majority vote of people who are present.
You want to do the vote?
Yeah, the four, I think it's just to allow a tiny little bit more time to make sure that there are no questions left unanswered and that everyone can make a point if they wish to. And I think that 5 minutes won't enough. Is anyone against?
Is there a 12 minutes?
Not a member of the parliament, but there are other things to be discussed later as well.
Yes. We will keep that. Could we have a show of hands? Everyone who should support.
Extending support, extending mobility. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Cool. So I think for the purpose of clarity, the compensation that students got last year, it wasn't a compensation. The university never called it a compensation because they know it's not a like-for-like compensation for what was lost. That money was all put into a pot and it came from Brunel's staff salary. So all that stuff that went on strike, they didn't get paid for those days that they went on strike. They put all that money into a pot, which was roughly around, I want to say 160K, something like that in total. And then the university worked collaboratively with myself and Aisha, the past president as well, where we did as much as we could to kind of gather as much accurate data as possible in terms of understanding what students had been impacted. And also we understood that some students, like we said, in certain divisions, there's a lot more action than in other divisions. So we knew that there was going to be certain students that had, you know, maybe one missed lecture, some students that had no missed lectures, and I think the highest was somewhere around 32, a person that lost 32 lectures during strike action. Obviously, £160,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when you have to split it amongst 7,000 people, it gets very thin. And then when you try and put those people into tiers, I'm not just defining the university, I'm just trying to explain how the process went. When you put those people into tiers and you start to recognize, okay, people that had one lecture cancelled will get this, people that had between 1 and 5 lectures cancelled will get this. it starts to get even lower at that point. I think that what happened to you was a mistake, because if you had more than one lecture cancelled, then you were entitled to the next band. So I think that was just a miscalculation of your tier. And then again, for the purpose of, you know, clarity and making sure that we're being as transparent as possible, because Parliament is the best platform to do that, is that the coffee voucher, that decision was discussed with us officers, but it was discussed from the point of the university weren't planning to give anything at all to the people that had only missed one lecture, because that would push the budgets really tight, and then we wouldn't be able to, you know, compensate for people that missed 25 lectures to get the amount of money that would, but like something that actually makes up for it a little bit more. So in that sense, I think that we need to take a level of responsibility for that. I personally think that, of course, getting a voucher for a missed lecture is not good enough, but it's better than nothing. And at the same point, there needs to be more work done from the university and us at Kent Union to put out the transparency to students around how tuition fees are spent, because a lot of people have the misconception that, oh, you know, £9,250 divided, I have this many lectures a term, blah, blah. Oh, each lecture costs £70. That's not how it works at all. Like, I can promise you that's not the amount of money that you have lost because of that one lecture, because that money goes out to pay for estates, for the library, for, you know, your Microsoft, your Teams, whatever it might be, like all those licenses, all those things are covered by tuition. So I think that there needs to be more support, more transparency, and just having these conversations a bit more openly is very important.
So I know that I was a recipient of one of those drinks vouchers things. I think one of the issues that I found with myself and my friends is last year was my third year, and until like a few months ago, I wasn't aware that I was staying here at Kent to do my masters. So when I did get notification about compensation, as did the majority of my friends who, you know, had like a decent amount of lectures lost and whatnot, we realised we technically had no compensation because we weren't valid students anymore. You know, like we had graduated or like we have finished, and you know, there are people now like completely different ends of the country doing other things at other universities. So I understand that it was really nice to have the drinks voucher and stuff and sort of say like, oh, okay, well, this is acknowledgement and stuff, but there were some people that have been affected within their third year that didn't get compensation until, you know, after the fact, and then they were like, well, I can't use this.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit wasted,
Yeah.
you know, and it was just, and they were kind of like, well, this just feels a bit like insult to injury.
Put a salt on the wound.
Yeah, so like they weren't like angry at the union or anything. They were just kind of like, this just kind of sucks because, you know.
And it does 100%. Like, I agree. Like, the drinks voucher is,
Unacceptable.
yeah, you know, I totally understand. I just think that
That's why I think this year you learn from your lessons. So this year we're working with the university as well in that consultation on how that pot of money, you know, for withheld salaries is used now, whether if goodwill payments are even the right way to go, or whether they can be used elsewhere to support students who have been impacted. You know, how else can we use that money for better?
I just think it's important to sort of work out as well which students are nearing the end of their time at Kent, if like a thing that could be used in their next academic year, which they won't have, will actually, you know.
I think it's important to point out that this time around we have new attendance monitoring system, so we know exactly what lectures will be missed, what teaching events will be missed, so we can keep that more accurate account. Whereas last year didn't have that because it was a bit hybrid, so that's where they kind of had that miscalculation of like who missed what lectures, so then dependent on the students reporting it to our academic experience reporting group, but also on the staff to actually let the university know, which most of them don't. They just strike. So we have to hopefully this year it'll be a lot better. So fingers crossed we'll fight for that on your behalf. Corey, 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll just be quick because I'll just comment to what Luca said, and then I think that she clarified about students who are supporting the cause, but not the action, and that's what the feedback I got from some of the students that I spoke to on the PG, but mostly they are taught. And for instance, they are mostly also international students because they are then torn in between supporting a cause. They feel like yes, the lecturer should be paid fairly, but at the same time they're paying a lot of money to media honestly, and missing one class, missing that week, it means that that's a lot of pounds that is just probably going to us. Although I know some of them are happy that they're off class. So I feel like most of the students who are in between there. But what I because I was here last time, what I realized is that they see this as not so much of an impact compared to last time, because they were so much more frequent, and even if it impacted our timelines in terms of deadlines. I mean, you're being set and it is saying you have a deadline, but you're not being told. I mean, what are you going to present? So I think they're a bit like lenient in terms of like, yeah, we can support this, but we don't want this to impact our time here. We don't want that to impact our studies. We just think a lot of money to be here. So I should mention that. Then on the second part, just a good analysis is I didn't get paid. Okay, I did follow through the. I didn't know that I had to sign up, so sorry for another thing. But there's somebody I know who went back and said, I didn't miss 5 classes. I missed 15, like 10, 15 classes, and he got more paid.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was unfair because who had decided
Because they then investigate.
Yeah, they did investigate.
So if they go back saying, oh, you've missed like more, if you say like, I've missed more than what you're telling me I've missed,
Yeah.
they go back and investigate, and then that's how they find out whether you're actually moving up in the band or not.
Or not.
So there's a whole team behind it.
Yeah, but I'm happy with what you're saying that this time we will do more. If it's meant to happen, I don't want it to happen, but we will do more facts finding and
100%.
even find other ways of doing the compensation rather than just,
Definitely. And in better ways if we can invest that money in different areas. Yeah.
exactly.
Just so we know, we've reached the allocated time, so if we could quickly get your points and then move on to the vote, that would be bad.
We're going to do another procedural motion to extend it further.
I think the agenda's pretty busy. I have 2 small things that I want to say, and yes, and also.
Carolina, go first, Jean.
I just think at the end of the day, it's really important to consider the effect that the strikes have on students. Regardless of what happens, we do support PGRs, who obviously are the ones that are striking through the work that Ben does, as we can see through the stipends increase that we work so hard on. So whether we choose to support the strike action or not, we do back the PGRs, who are the body of students that we represent as a union. But I think it's just really important to focus on the fact that this is a lose-lose for all of the undergrads being affected by strikes. And therefore, I personally strongly think that we should not support the strikes. As much as I support the cause, the action isn't right for students. It's not fair to them. They're paying disgusting amounts of money to be here. And especially people reaching their final years now have been affected so many years on end. And there's other things we can do. We can write letters to the VC, spam her inbox. There's other ways that we can protest that are less detrimental to students. So I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. I don't know if, can we take the other 2 points as well?
Can we take what, sorry?
The other 2 points?
Yeah, if we're quick.
Yep, Lupe.
So first one is a shameless plug. Please, everyone, let your friends know, people in your networks, people in your societies, whatever it might be, that the academic is really important in terms of us gathering that data to make sure that the people that are impacted have an accurate record of it. And I wanted to make another point, but I completely forgot.
Yes.
Like just a few very short points. I feel like firstly, like I personally do support this just because this isn't the fault of the teachers, and I feel like they shouldn't, like, they are striking for their pay and things that they should have. And I feel like as a union, even though we are for the students, we should also be there to support the teachers. And kind of coming off of this, I want to kind of know what, because you listed it in the what exactly we'll be doing, but I do kind of want to just know exactly what we will be doing if we decided to
Vote and support.
vote and support, what we'll be doing for students in support, and to see that, so that what is going on this year will not end up like how it happened last year. That being said, I also very much so do appreciate like what you said, but it's also not the you already know this, but it's not the work of the union and the teachers to provide that financial compensation towards students. And we should be lobbying the university more and more, like put more pressure on them to do something for the teachers and for the students. And I think also something people might, I don't know if this is not exactly helping my point, but this is now the 3rd year in a row that students have been feeling like we're basically cheated out of our studies. I'm the third year, so I've been here for 3 years, and this is the third year that there's been a year where we're like, why, what am I paying for? So.
Thank you, Matt. We don't have any more time.
No, it's a procedural motion.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Procedural motion to have a secret vote, and my argument for is that it's not that I want to keep it secret. If anyone wants to come ask me later what way I voted, I don't mind. But I think that it's really important for people to not feel pressured into voting a certain way because they see other people voting a certain way. And I know that this is a very, topic that splits up a lot of people. So I think that that's the best way to do it, and that's how we past years as well.
Yeah, so we need someone to propose the idea, the procedure motion. Okay, so then now we need to vote on the procedural motion, so we need a 2/3 majority.
Secret vote basically means that you vote. You don't have to put your hand up to vote. We do a different way, so no one will know which way you voted unless you say.
We will only know the numbers at the end.
I think also in proposals, don't they go up with most open proposals that go up on the Kent Union Parliament page to show who was in favour and who was against, which won't happen obviously.
Can everyone just keep their hands up, please? So we've got 1, 2. Yeah. So yeah, that's the way to do a secret ballot. So we'll get to doing a secret ballot on the issue then.
Who should we message?
So I've set up a way of doing it. I will just quickly disconnect my laptop from the screen.
Oh, yeah.
So it might take a wee bit of time, but
We're not in papers now.
yeah, it's some way of basically what it is. I've set up a poll on straw poll, and basically you've got a vote token. So if you go up to my laptop and then put the vote token in, then you can vote, and that's basically a way of authenticating it. Make sure that only one person can vote once. So what I'll do, I'll start by giving all of these out.
Are they really long codes?
They are, which I accept those in my list. Unless of course you would rather do it the way you've done before. This is.
I'm sorry to be able to Sorry. I'll see if I can walk in. You should celebrate.
I wouldn't remember this, but my
Can everyone just be quiet? I need to explain to
Okay.
Could everyone just be quiet? I just need to quickly explain the process to Ntito because she's attending virtually. So Ntito, we're going to be doing a secret ballot. What I'm going to do on the chat, I'm going to post the link to the ballot, and then I'm going to message you your code. And if you could then pop your code in, follow the link, and then pop your code in, and then vote.
Okay.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Everyone's in the chat.
Wait, the link is in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what?
You put this code in.
So you can, if you wish, follow the link on your chat and vote on your phone by putting the code in. You'll also be able to if you don't vote on my laptop.
If anyone's doing, if anyone's doing like the new factor.
Yes.
Yeah, what voting for being the voting.
You can do it if you wish, yes.
So voting in support is, it basically means that we'll be going up to the offering coffee, hot drinks, make sure that we're keeping water out the strikes. Also attending the rally. If an officer feels strongly about it, or if a parliament member feels strongly about it and wants to go up and speak at the rally, they can choose to do so. And also it just means that we, in our conversations with the university, it would probably become a really big focus in terms of trying to find a solution to it. So I guess keeping in mind that supporting means that officers in particular need to dedicate a lot more time to make sure that this takes place, but also I guess on a personal note from Parliament members, if you vote to support, it'd be really, really, really nice to see you there, because that's what actually counts. It's really nice that you voted in Parliament and in a big decision-making body, but we want to live and breathe what we do and what we decide and what we stand for. So I think that would be another thing for members of Parliament, is like trying to be there if possible to make sure that you're also supporting there in person. That doesn't mean that if we vote to not support, that we will, reduce our support to students or reduce our efforts with the university. We'll still be standing for the cause because it just matches with Kent Union and what we stand for. But it means that we wouldn't be as involved in the physical strike days and the physical rallies, basically.
Once you voted, if you could pass me your token back.
I haven't even.
Thank you. So, very straightforward adjustment. Yeah. So,
How do we have to?
Universities do just get through the word union, which the fact that it shows kind of consistent. Yeah, yes, this union is effectively. So it's all their pressure.
Do you know how many PGTs there are, like, post-graduate teachers?
thank you for following up with your numbers, guys.
Yeah.
No
way. We have 300.
Yeah, sorry.
About 1,500.
Yes.
That's PG,
PG, so 1,500 PG students
in general.
And then a small portion up to about 300.
It's a little bit tricky to get. There's no. Yeah, I mean, like university kind of like you see that the amount of figures, and they are ridiculously up to date. It's like we've had so they're like
have teaching jobs that are not all the union.
Yeah.
Some are. So we don't really know this.
This is like qualification, they're externally funded, but internally supervised, they can also still be part of the external university. So they can have a supervisor from this university work for an external university and be funded by another place. So getting the exact numbers.
Yeah.
Yep, so if you just want to. I'll just put up together.
But for instance, about. It's like 300.
If that's good or not, I don't want to call. Why are you asking? No, they're never.
You're just going to say everything.
Last year, I felt like we actually had something to think about.
I still. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but did you read the message that I sent where it said?
So I appreciate it's not. Let's say. Oh, yeah. So is everybody in the room voted? Everyone, so everybody in the room voted?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, gentlemen, Tito. So I could have a bit quiet, please.
Yeah. That was weird, right?
And Tito, have you managed to vote okay?
Yes, I have.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, I'm just going to find out what the results of the ballot were.
Yep. Should we do a drum roll?
This is not entertainment. Please. Go. I'm putting please your motion.
Everybody has voted, so that's all good to see. We had 10 votes in support and 7 against. Since this is just a stance, it requires a simple majority, meaning Parliament has voted to support UCU strike action.
Okay, moving on to the 5-4 bylaws amendment, and we'll have Ben introduce it.
I feel I was kind of excited to stand behind the Liz Truss lectern, but I never actually did that the next time. So, again, for those of you who haven't heard, it's about 5-4 opposite proposal. In a moment, I'll give Zed a chance to actually discuss that. And then over the course of the last 2-3 weeks, give or take, we've been consulting with postgraduates, finding out generally what the consensus is towards this proposal and discussing with them. Miguel has collected some data on that and would like to give a presentation. So after that, Miguel will kind of discuss on that, and then we'll open the floor for discussion, if that's so.
Sorry, just have a question. How long are we spending on this?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay.
So of course we can get a team. So we're about to review and keep moving this quick. So you'd like to go to the proposal for that?
Just to say, this isn't a bylaw amendment yet. We're not voting on anything today. This is just a discussion. So we've heard the post community and we're not putting it forward for a vote. We're just discussing the idea so we can have, because we did bring it forward in Parliament, but we didn't discuss it at the full Parliament last time. This is the point where we can discuss today. Now, the proposal, as you guys all received it probably, hopefully, it sets out an amendment to the union bylaws to redistribute the work of the officer team. The work of the postgraduate officer should be absorbed by other roles. This amendment will dissolve the role of VP of postgraduate experience for the next academic year and embed the work into the remaining officer roles. So the rationale is that the role that is specific to postgraduate and makes sole responsibility and accountability belong to one role. This role often works with other officers on issues that relate to postgraduate experience due to the nature of other roles, as the other roles fall under area of remit and not representation of a single community, whereas academic experience, health for community, student engagement. So this is not to say that postgraduate students will not be a priority. The aim is to change it to embed the postgraduate student into every officer role at Kent Union. This will make the whole officer team accountable and responsible to all students and specifically postgraduate students. This will give more pressure and resources to postgraduate students and create more opportunity to work with the officer team on campaigns and activities for postgraduates. Currently, there are around 2,000 postgraduate students at the University of Kent, which make up approximately 15% of all students at the university. We feel that this will help strengthen the resource for postgraduates. Postgraduates will have more officers to work with on campaigns, projects, and support, specifically on their areas of remit, so what they want to be focusing on. There will be more voices behind postgraduates and improving their experience in every single stakeholder relation that the officers have. And the office team would have influence and work closely with the university. This will mean that 4 officers will be delivering the interests of postgraduate students rather than just 1. There would be more shared knowledge that would be easier to postgraduate students access and more accountability for the whole office team, as they are elected to represent all students by the student body. The proposed plan of action is that the president will become the lead officer for postgraduates and will propose joining GRC as a member, which is the Graduate Research College, and lobby for more representation of PG students, the PGTs and PGRs on the GRC. The representation advocacy team will support student representation for committees, working with our PG close reps, as well as our PG network and the Parliament Open PG places. We would lobby for the university to have a postgraduate specific representative, specifically PGR focused on the University Council, which is the highest decision-making body at the university. And we will work with the university to create a postgraduate student experience committee. This committee would be exclusively postgraduate representation. We want to also hire a student staff member with a PGR focus, who would be a PGR student. As we know, that PGR students at Kent do have part-time jobs at the university, so we can provide them with a job opportunity that represents their community's interest and events and does all of those bits. We can then represent them in terms of their interest, in terms of our area of agreement, like academic experience or like student engagement. We would also consult postgraduate students for the remainder of the academic year and see how they'd like to be represented going forward. The consultation will form on PGT and PGR issues, and we would have a student priority with a PG focus. Postgraduate specific community working group and facilitating events, activities, and community building. So that will be specifically for the engagement side of things on how we host events for PG students that are important to them, but also help them develop their skills as a PG student. We know they have completely different needs and completely different set of wants and asks from the university to undergraduate students. We've had a lot of consultation, but I'll pass it over back to Ben to go through that.
Fantastic. So generally, the consultation we had with a range of different students. We've tried to communicate with everyone. We've had from the PG network to our residential life assistants. We've worked with them following community life to bring general events and our postgraduates. We discussed it with Brussels and, well, actually only the Brussels campus at the moment. Paris campus has not yet had a statement on it. In the last 2 weeks, the RLAs have already covered, and generally we also did, myself, Zed, and the PG network do some consultation out on the plaza that was run by the PG network to try and find a little wider thing, and Miguel, I believe, has done some foruming as well. We also had a Menti poll that was on our website that will allow postgraduates to get their vote. The general consensus amongst the body has been against the proposal, ranging from the views of being strongly against and quite sort of actively opposing, to seeing the benefits but not particularly liking the proposal, to instead perhaps in leaning towards the union focusing on postgraduates and implementing some of those policy points without the removal of the position. But Miguel has prepared a presentation for this, so I will shush and pass over to you.
I just sent a few down. Sorry if I sent anything by email.
I just had it from I haven't been able to see it, so I can't get it up.
Is it not coming up now?
I haven't seen it come through, so I can't display it. Sorry.
Just now, literally.
Yeah, I can't put it up because we need to go through it first. Yeah, apologies.
Yeah. So, we've got question. So this is,
Sorry, guys, there was a screenshot of all this, but.
yeah. Okay, well, yeah, hi, which is the postgraduate network, Marie, Megan, myself, and Hefe, who's in Medway. Yeah, we believe that this proposal is premature. And added to that, it's the overwhelmingly negative response from postgraduate community on this proposal. Therefore, we're against this change in bylaws, but well, this is written before the change. So I had a presentation about it, but I can come through. So I was just looking at the facts about how the previous parliament and back in 2018 voted for this. And the previous company president said it was vital that we pass this motion. So I just find it interesting that it's vital that we reverse it now. I feel like it's just lip service and a cultural change within Kent Union is needed before the position is seriously implemented. We, as a PG network, have taken it upon ourselves to gather PG views from surveys, standing at the plaza for half a day, to gathering feedback from both undergrads and postgrads. And we had a pie chart which would show that 91% for both undergrad and postgrad are against this, and overwhelmingly 98% of postgrads are against this. Again, this is all anonymous, so I can't guarantee that these were like different people all the time. I tried my best, and it was about 50 votes, I believe, from the postgrads, just to give you some idea of the sample size, and that does not even include the feedback Megan has gotten from postgraduate students, nor feedback and Tete has gotten from the postgraduate view in Medway. But I think one of the biggest reasons is that I think it's premature, and I don't believe that even if we push this to January, we'll change the postgraduate view. It'll only delay things. And I think it's unfair on the part of the postgraduate network that we have only been informed about this change last night at 5 p.m. when we have been hard at work on this for the past few weeks. And to the undergraduates here, if you agree with the proposal, I would strongly think about the way in which the policy has been proposed. Has it been transparent? Has it been open? Has it been democratic, particularly to the one group that's affecting the most, the postgraduate community? And bear in mind that we had only found out about this proposal the day of the parliament, 3rd of November. It's not even 20 days since then. I don't think that's fair. And I just think it's a breach of the student priorities when it says transparency decision making, where officers should be communicating often with students on their intentions, and that students need to be consulted more often. And students should be seen as partners about this. And I understand that the unions believe that this is the strategy, but I feel like it's reflecting the student strategy rather than students' needs. We should be informing the strategy, not the other way around.
I know that when you guys held one of the forums, chat was going on quite a bit in the postgraduate chat as well on WhatsApp. I know that there were like a few members here. There were comments saying like as soon as they heard stuff about funding, that it was instant like this is just the direction to save money. You know, that kind of was like a consensus among some of the students. They were saying that it's not fair because you know, many people want like a wearable role. You know, that part was impacted by COVID for a lot of people. You know, and even when it's coming to that big white piece of paper down there, it won't unfold because of tape. But I actually have the pictures of what the results actually said, and they were questioning both the undergraduate opinion and the postgraduate opinion. Majority said no, and I'll read out some. So undergraduate said no, the PD should have what to say on this. No, it affects postgraduates. This should be a consultation with them. Kent Union, so someone was in agreement saying that Kent Union should be the first one to contact, you know, like so the whole committee can help them. But we don't feel like that's what would happen, you know, because it would just kind of get delegated around. And last time it was spoken about in the forum, it was mentioned that people will go up to like an individual to say like, oh, I have this problem, and then it get delegated. But with postgraduates, we would know who to go to, so they would be redirected to the president. We don't really feel that sort of makes any sense, because we have a postgraduate role dedicated to postgraduate issues. Not saying obviously that the president or anyone really get involved that doesn't understand postgraduate issues. It's just nice to have an individual that is familiar and personal with them. It is literally their role. There are no secondary commitments. There are no other things that are going to take them away from that. You know, the postgraduate response when doing this poll on the plaza was entirely negative, you know, with some very strong language that I don't think I can repeat because I don't want it, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, basically every single time it has been asked, brought up, even on the poll on the forum website, yeah, it has been overwhelmingly negative response. And I really feel like that should very much be considered in this proposal going forward.
Yeah. And I think I'll just add that I'm part of also RLA, and we kind of set a question just and no biasness. We just put tag the poster that Ken Union put on the website and ask them if they can read and just tell us what they are for. And we will have projected it. Maybe next time we'll have in discussion, which I'll also have questions on why we're not having it today fully. So most of them were against. We had like 9 students who responded, and out of that, 9 were against the proposal of removing the VP postgraduate team, and only there's 1 who, said was for it. Yeah, so that clearly I feel like is the voice of the student, not necessarily, but all these student back that we've gotten are not for the proposal. So I strongly feel like this is something we need to listen to the students' voice and vote or just keep going. Yeah, because it's really interesting.
Chair of the Academic Network who says that he has had some feedback from students. We have 2 postgraduate students right here. We have Emma, we have Callum, you know, who did raise questions and who were sort of like, what? And, you know, they also have thoughts about this if we have time to bring it up. But, you know, like we have actual people that can sort of vouch. It's not just us, you know, having favoritism as like the postgraduate network. We have actual people that have like valid objections.
Nicola, just because I noticed Nicola says
like I'm quite confused. So like if you ask the postgraduate students if they agree or disagree with removing the position, like an immediate response would be no, and like you could know that without doing the poll. Like if you ask, are you willing to pay more for the food? The response would be no. But if you say, are you willing to pay for the food more because it's like eco-friendly? You know, the response would be different. So I feel that the poll would make sense if you would ask the postgraduate students, okay, disagree, but why? Or on which terms would you be willing to agree in removing the position? And like those responses would be valuable in the discussion, not just.
We actually do have reasons.
I'm trying to finish my point. But just like, of course, most of the students would disagree. It's like not really helpful from my perspective. So maybe it might be helpful to go more into the detail and, you know, like find a discussion how to make it work. So, yeah.
So I'm not sure which one was actually.
I think it was you.
All right, okay, so in answer to that, so there has been, I suppose, 2 branches of questions asked, which in one instance it may be, do you agree with, should we remove the Vice President of Postgraduate Experience? I can understand why there's the argument that, like you said, would you like to have more explicit agreement or not? The consultation question online was listed as 5 to 4 officers and varying sort of in a sort of overarching format listed what the proposal would do and what it was aimed to do. That was the result of the Menti poll and also the sort of postgraduate forums. And in those, I think on the Menti poll, we had 13 responses, I believe.
Yeah.
All of those were against as well. And the PG forums where this was discussed, and much like today, actually, where Zed has got up and discussed the proposal, mediated first version, because I guess it's been a very sort of similar image to how the PG forum has been. It's interesting to get actually the perspective of Parliament on this as well, and hear questions. But I hope that kind of perhaps answers a few of those. Or it shows that some of the information was aimed differently to, it was asked as a 5 to 4 officers, and then if he read into it, you could find out they were removing this position.
Guys, just so you know, we have 7 minutes left and
Yeah, just to sort of also reiterate that, like, the information that, you know, that has like actual reasonings and people saying why they said this, it was on the presentation. But it is also on the website, it's on that piece of paper, people have actually written out actual reasons. It is there, we just don't have the time or the ability to show you, unfortunately.
So in the forum as well. In the forums as well.
Oh, yes, in the forums.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have a few things to say. So the first one is, I'm just repeating what has been said about data that, you know, 50 out of 1,500 students, first of all, is not representative, but also it can't be guaranteed that it's accurate and that it's valid, first of all. Second of all, I'd be really interested to hear what the culture change that you're proposing should be, because we have been trying really hard. And let me finish, please. You know, 4 years ago in 2018, when this motion was put forward to add this to the bylaws, I think it's quite unfair to like challenge and put current president's views against past president views, because they're not the same person, they don't have the same experiences, they don't have the same knowledge. They're allowed to think differently and to feel differently. Same way that you couldn't ask a member of parliament 4 years ago to vote the exact same way just because they form part of the same network. Then I wanted to say around why this wasn't brought forward earlier. First of all, I think it's really important to understand the work that officers do when students are not on campus. And I know that during the summer there is postgraduate students on campus, but summer is a really relatively quiet time. Officers, a lot of the time this year we had 3 new officers. It's a very tough job to get into. The summer takes a lot of training, a lot of preparation, a lot of planning, a lot of things to do. And some things that are strategy related don't come forward until later on in the year. But also, when you look at the reasons as to why we moved, when it comes to election of officers, why we moved away from manifesto and moved into reason for standing, it's because a lot of the time students will have an idea of how things work, and then when they get into the role, they realize very quickly, actually, that's not how it works at all. I got it all wrong. So we couldn't always inform strategy with what students want, because we need to really think what is possible first before we propose something that is just unachievable. And that's the bottom line, is we wanted to think it through before we brought it forward, because we didn't want to upset anyone without really having put the due effort that it deserves to be put into it. Then, sorry, one more thing.
So I would be able to, while you're thinking on else one, could we do a procedural motion to extend the guillotine by, should we say 10 minutes to begin with? That's okay. Yeah, before generally, I think there's a lot of discussions. We're already, is it 17 minutes now into this discussion? Yeah, I know that's it. Yes, sir. Yeah, Dad has got a question to ask. I'd love to hear the views of generally other members of Parliament. So I think having more time to discuss this would be quite beneficial.
Do we have an argument against? Could we vote with the show of hands?
Thank you. I finally unlocked my laptop.
We also have
oh, it's hands up.
And then I guess the last thing that I wanted to say was, I think it was you, Megan, that said it around, you know, having a dedicated person, and why would, you know, we want someone to not have to focus on other things, like they can focus on our issues. We argue about my role in particular. I'm academic experience just for undergraduate students because we have a dedicated PG student. So why would it be fair for my work for undergraduate students to be, you know, for my workload to be increased when I need to collaborate with them, for example, if my role doesn't cover PG students? So I guess the argument could be made both ways. And one of the arguments that we have been making in consultations, and we discussed last time in Parliament as well, and at the forums, is that the BPPG role covers a demographic, whereas the other roles cover areas of work. So any area of work that a PG needs help with can be covered by the rest of us. So we're already taking on that work anyway. So I guess that's a counterpoint to yours as well, is that, you know, our workload already gets kind of increased by PGs. I'm not complaining, it's part of my job, but you know, it's an argument that anyone could make that, you know, if you don't have a dedicated role for your own demographic, then people's workload would get taken up by other things.
We have, you know, that's why we have networks to represent demographics of students who are marginalized, who don't have the voice that is of the majority in a sense. That's why we have a, you know, an LGBTQ plus network. That's why we have a BAME network. That's why we have a women's network, is to get those groups really to feed into our democratic processes.
Yes. I just wanted to say a few just very, very short points. That's just in response to you. I feel like, because I actually went to the stall that was there, and I felt like it was actually discussed very well by the postgrad network, just like what was going on and all the information behind it. Like, even as someone who's sitting in Parliament, but I heard them speaking to people who weren't there, just to let them know exactly what was going on and all of the thoughts and everything that was kind of brought up in actually a very like neutral way. And from that, people were able to make their decision based on it. I feel like, I don't think that they did it in a way to like almost like trick people to get that against, notion. And I kind of like, I feel for the postgrad students, just because I do understand how frustrating something like this must be for them. And kind of coming off of like the difference between having like the 4 officers all participating in doing something for the postgrads, and kind of the idea of having one singular person to go to. I feel like there's a big difference in what's represented by the networks, and like for the LGBT network accessibility, and for postgrads versus undergrad, because I feel like that's 2 completely different areas, if that makes sense. I don't know exactly how to frame what I'm saying, but postgrad is an entire kind of area of studies that is completely different from the rest of the students. And I feel like that alone kind of, it makes sense that they have their own officer, because that is just completely separate to the rest of the school, to the university.
I think it was put in.
I think it was for the vote.
Yeah.
Unless. Yeah, so that was okay. So we got 2 hands there, then Carol's the next one, so last.
Just so you guys know, we've got 5 minutes left, so that in mind.
Sweet.
Well, generally, I don't know entirely the rules on Parliament with members versus observers. Is there any preference, or is it just first come first?
Anyone here is a member who's able to vote there.
If we keep comments, then we'll try and keep that. If not, we can extend it again if needs be, because it looks like there's already 5 points, I believe. Oh, and before moving on, I'd like to pass a procedural motion again to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. It's all right for anyone. Item 4, there's 5 more people to discuss. I think this is still, this is probably our best opportunity to discuss it with the full body of Parliament, without the pressure of a vote. But it's amazing to actually hear all your opinions, and I'd quite like to extend this as much as possible. So yeah.
Do we have an argument against?
No.
And Tito, if you keep your hand up if you're going to vote for the procedural motion, if that's okay.
Yeah, everyone else, show of hands.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's everyone. Sorry, 15 minutes.
So we will start with Alan.
My point is basically dealt with already, but it was the fact that quite a few of the PG students didn't view this as just a raised prices on food situation. It was a situation of basically, we are not the generic student population. Now, we might be 15% of the student population, but we approached this from quite a different situation, quite a different perspective to quite a few students. We were also thinking, at least with my fellow opinion, which is, why would the union open themselves up to the possibility of removing officers so easily? For example, you say if we replace the PGR representative with the president's office, that means that if the president is doing excellently or something else, but because they're focusing on that perspective, the PGR students could remove them for failure to represent them. This does not allow for that kind of openness, this flexibility. We were just puzzled by a series of questions like that.
To respond to that, it's always been in place that you can use Parliament to try to create new officers, try to remove officers. It's not something new. This has always been a thing. And VNCing an officer, as you saw last year, is not necessarily a good thing because after a certain period of time in the year, they can't be replaced. So say the postgrad community felt like the postgrad officer wasn't doing an adequate job of representing them. If they were to VNC this person before September, I don't know what the date is, that would be fine. We could hold a re-election and we could have a new officer in place. If it were to be after September, then the year would go on without a postgrad officer. So it's not that simple.
Also, can I just say the process of removing a role is different from the process of removing a person that is not adequate for that role. When it comes to a VNC, there's a few other steps, and obviously I want to say as well, this is not an easy way to remove an officer. This is actually a very, if you ask Ben, who has been doing consultation for 2 weeks to try and get data for this, because we wouldn't, making a decision at Parliament 2 hours is cool, is easy, but the whole work that goes behind it is not easy at all. So I think that, it's not easy and it's not an easy way out, but it's also a very different processes for a VNC versus removing a role from the bylaws.
It just in response to that point. I want to say we don't want to take the easy way out. That's the whole reason why we are doing this. Is that we want to make real strategic change in ensuring that representation improves within the PG community. That's why we're not doing this as an attack on the PG community at all. It is our efforts and our research and the work that we know of, that we know within the union, being part of the union for so long as well, from those officers and myself and Tom, just knowing that how can we improve it, and this is one of the ways that we know that we can, and we can ensure that because we know what it is like on the inside.
Mine was more of a question that, so I'm gathering that removing this role, you're siphoning out the postgrad officers' responsibilities to the other officers. This is the question for you guys. So with that, the responsibilities are with the other officers. What do you feel like you're losing out with removing that role? Is a responsibility to be given across to all the other officers?
I feel like the general consensus is we will be losing out of our sort of direct link to the union, because as it currently stands, we can get in direct contact with them, because obviously this is his role, this is what he does, and we can discuss like issues that we have found, and if it is like, is this just a postgraduate thing, or is it something that we can bring to the rest of the union? It is just sort of like, at least this is what I think. I don't know if you guys are in agreement. Yeah. But it's like, this is the way that we directly address the union, like in the quickest manner possible, with sort of the most relevant help, I suppose, at the time.
Just as a slight addition to that, the Mature Society, that was actually one of the things they piloted. So without a chair for the Mature and Part-Time Network, because unfortunately had a last-minute change of plans to the individual who was going to chair. Their thoughts are generally, especially for mature students as well, having a named postgrad officer is quite helpful in understanding that you've got that. And whilst absolutely the proposal link would link the president to the postgrad role, but the difficulty of not having the title can impact students who are perhaps less inclined to use a student union for whatever reason that could be. But that was some feedback in the Mature Society that we wanted to have.
Also, some other feedback I've had from students is that they feel reassured knowing that like, they know exactly who to go to if they have a postgraduate issue. Because I'd say, like, I have been asked who I talk to, I said, well, this is an email, he will be able to.
It's hoping to see who.
I'd like to respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, being a postgrad myself last year in Medway, being an undergrad, you know, also I'd make time for any postgrad trying to talk to me now, even, you know, it doesn't have to be next year if this was in or whatever. But I feel like, you know, there's that option as well. And I feel like, you know, that officer has unique expertise and stakeholder relationships with people who will be able to help with those issues and has that knowledge. And I personally think it's better to have representation spread across more than one individual.
And just quickly on that point, we were in Medway today doing another student forum, and we met quite a few PG students in the library, and none of them knew the BPPG.
Or even it existed, there was a role.
Yeah. So that is a fault on our part as well, like promoting it, but they knew who we were, like as officers. And it's not, we're trying to separate the people who are in the roles now from the role itself. We're looking at the roles and their effectiveness compared to the people that were.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to ask, can we please go to Medway representative?
Hi, thank you. So yeah, some of the students I've spoken to, the postgraduate students, like he just said so many people don't even know that there was a postgraduate role. So I think there should be more, if it stays, there should be more publicity. And a lot of people do want representation, especially being like a small section of the student population. And then one person asked that rather than removing the position altogether, can we not make it smaller? Can we not make it smaller? Like I can't remember the way she said it, but just make it not as the same on the same level, but a smaller position. Yeah, that was some of the feedback I got.
Like a part-time officer.
Did you mean like part-time officer? Sorry, Letizia?
Yeah, like a part-time officer, or just a smaller role rather than remove it altogether.
But that's just quickly on that. That is what we are proposing, is that we could be hiring the student staff who we pay as a part-time staff member at Kent Union, and their sole focus will be on PGR representation across all campuses. So that's what we're proposing, is that they will be able to do that from their community because they're on the ground and they know what's going on. So that's where, you know, we'd have that smaller role, and then it would also feed into the office's work, the whole team's work in terms of postgraduate issues.
Very conscious, just so we swap between sort of department members and officers. If we go to Emily and then Nicholas and then Lupe, if that's okay. Louise, maybe Emily, Nicholas, Lupe.
At least from my perspective, from the people that I've spoken to, the thing that postgrads feel like they're missing out on is that if it went down to 4, it's kind of just a matter of representation and visible representation, because postgrad students are so much more likely to be part-time, to have had like breaks from uni, to have families, to be working. Just having a figurehead and that beacon that you could know to turn to. I don't doubt that 4 officers could do a half decent job of it. It's just because we are such a small community and we have so kind of little time, given a lot of other circumstances, to go hunting for the person that would do the best job for us, that would kind of have to work for it to get delegated to the relevant people. If you've got someone that's fighting for you, like if I had a wellbeing issue, I knew I could turn to Tom. If I had an issue with academic experience, I knew I could turn to Lupe. But if it's a specific postgrad issue, it would land on the president's doorstep, and then the president would have to figure out what the hell to do with that. And if you're obviously not talking about you specifically in this context, but if you're already trying to like handle 85% of the student undergrad population and all of the specific issues that they have, then there's not too much room for that 15% to squeeze in there. And given that we're here for such a short amount of time, some of us are here for 1 year doing a master's, some of us are here for 2 doing a part-time. It's almost like we've got such a short amount of time to try and get the help that we need. And if we don't have that person that we know we can just go to, who will be able to throw everything into it because it is their dedicated job to just focus on that specifically. A lot of people that I've spoken to have felt like they would be losing out on being able to get that kind of, I don't want to say instantaneous because it would never be instantaneous, but that kind of immediate response and really feeling that they're seen and heard even though we are a small part of the community.
Can I counter that quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that sense, the president position in itself is the most visible and the most outward facing, is the most known by the student population as to who they can turn to. By making that president the lead postgrad, or the postgrads know that they can go to the president. Again, as an example, using just today, the PG students that we knew who the president was, but not who the BBPG was. And that's a very clear distinction of students who aren't that engaged with the union, right? These people were people who weren't part of a democratic process, and they were just in the library doing their work, like most PG students would be doing at this time. And that's specifically like with me, and I've been in this role for some time. I know that this role isn't focusing just on undergraduates. It's an overall focus on the whole student body. But my whole job is to be that visible figure, is to be that beacon that students can come to with their issues, and then I know where it needs to go and who needs to work on it. And that's exactly how any sabbatical office team works.
Just because I'm conscious of this.
Yeah, I have 2 points. Firstly, I'm not trying to say that you're tricking somebody to do something. I'm not saying you're liars or something like that. It's not the point. Maybe let's try to look at it from different point of view. So I feel that some officers like you said, or you feel like the best what is happening around the role. And we as a parliament have some kind of idea, and the general students don't really have idea, which is fair enough. It's not their job to do. But the way I see it is, okay, if they're saying that it's reasonable to divide the responsibility of the postgraduate representative between the resting positions, let's trust them that it's reasonable because they have more information than we do. And if you do trust them, then ask the questions to make sure it's happening in the way you would like to. But I'm not really saying asking those questions. I'm hearing just arguments pro and not. So yeah, if we can try to think that, okay, we're removing this position and we're splitting the roles, and adding that we would make sure it would, the transition would be smooth. So you can place conditions which would make sure that it will be fair and in the way that everyone is satisfied. But I feel that the discussion we're having right now is not really productive, and I'm not trying to be offensive. All the points you're putting in, making the decision more accurate, but maybe let's be more constructive. And if you are against, place specific argument against, and actually trying to listen and actually find out what's happening rather than being defensive. No, that's all I'm trying to say.
Guys, just so you know, we've got about 2-3 minutes left, and we have some other important things on the agendas.
Can I respond to just that? Sorry.
Yeah,
I was just go around. Yeah, thanks for that. But I'm just thinking he's raising his point, which is valid. And I'm happy that the consultation that Ken Union has done, we've got both representation in the House, and they have heard from the students, irrespective of them knowing the role. What has been that feedback? Because as much as we say they have been in office, I agree with that. Lupe Caroline, they will run for the election, and that will make them more experienced about this role. But is that, I mean, if you're going to decide that, is it what we are deciding is best for students, or we are consulting students and listening to their voice? Because I feel that's more important than what is needed. And if postgraduate are saying they need somebody to represent them as a singular person, why are we pushing that we need to separate the two? Secondly, if this was where I was also going, I feel like how do we handle the election period? Because if I have a student that also I want to vote for, whether I vote as a person who has a vote for that student, as a postgraduate, I don't feel like my vote will add any value. And this is why, because the undergraduates will definitely be overrunning the number of postgraduate numbers. So there's not that kind of representation in terms of the election that I feel my voice hasn't had.
Yeah, I think I already appreciate Mikla's point, because I feel like a lot of the consultation has been very much, and particularly last session that I wasn't at because I took the day off, but I did read through the chat and there was kind of questioning around, oh, maybe the team needs to work more effectively, or maybe the team needs to do this and needs to do that, when there is just no background information. Like, you guys have never sat in an office or catch up at 9 AM on a Monday where we talk about everything that's happening. Like, you don't see all of those things. And you also, like I was saying earlier as well, is around the strategy, not being able to kind of put it out fast enough to you, is that we need to realize what's realistic with the knowledge that we have. And particularly thinking of that consultation, we've been trying to pass on that knowledge, and we've been trying to explain to you how we work together, how, you know, we collaborate with Ben. And when we talk about like a specific point of contact, then Ben will still have to contact us to get that stuff done. And I guess I'm really interested to hear what specifically a postgraduate issue is, because if it comes to like stipends, that's financial support, and that's Tom. If it comes around the employability aspect of it, that's Carolina. If it's, you know, study spaces in the library, how the carousel's at the top, like, that's academic experience, because ultimately I'm the person that has the best connections with the IT and the library service. So I think that you not trusting us, and it's not that we don't want to change our minds, it's that we have a lot of information that we've been trying to pass on to you that is just not being believed. And I really don't understand, because I've done nothing towards the postgrad community to not seem trustworthy or to seem unhelpful, or to seem like I'm not trying to help the community grow and thrive, because I've done nothing but the opposite. I've tried to help as much as I can. I've been trying to be as transparent and as helpful and as available to everyone as possible. So I don't understand why the narrative kind of takes that way, and why that trust is just not connecting.
So, two quick things. I'll do the things anyway. Secondly, the third one's the charm. Just a procedural motion to put the guilty an extra 5 minutes.
So the motion forward.
Floor, generally, it looks like there's a couple more points, and I believe the last thing on our agenda is the officer update. Generally, we can, is there not? I'm sorry, is there?
Just to make you aware, Karen has any other business.
Then it's an apology. Then in that case, yeah, I still think 5 extra minutes would be helpful, but I can also understand if that's not agreed by general parliament.
Did they have an opposal?
Yeah.
I think this discussion's been going around in circles. I think both parties are unwilling to understand and properly listen to the points that are being raised. I don't think it's productive for us to continue this.
Yeah, and I guess just to add to that, we're not really going to vote on this today. So.
So we vote in favour of extending the guillotine. You could raise your hand. So the guillotine has not been extended. Then let's just have Lewis, and then we need to move on.
I'm just going to say, from the students I spoke to, so the students I spoke to, which was about 42, most of it was for the proposal, not against. Sorry. They did understand that the postgrad experience role could be transferred, and they didn't know why there was a position from the students. Most of them, but great, we've got representation, but they did understand that the role could be transferable into the well-being, pregnancy and all that. And it would help Carolina with the employability. They could find graduate schemes. And so there was points of for and then against. were more like, we need more representation, there's only 50%. So I felt like the community was getting like left in the corner, which I know is not true because I worked with Lupe last year and she was great for postgraduates. I even worked with previous postgrad experience officer last year and he didn't really, they didn't attend any of the events compared to the postgrad network and myself and Lupe, which was a little bit, shouldn't target, but it was more like more effort on us.
In terms of representation, this parliament is the parliament that has the most amount of postgraduate students it has ever had. Would like to point that out, that this is the first parliament where 1/3 of the entire parliament is made up of postgraduate students, which is amazing. And that's apart from the postgraduate places that haven't been elected for yet, and the elections are going on currently. So we'll have even more postgrad representation. And parliament is the highest student decision-making body in Cape Union. So you guys do our direction. So if there's a postgraduate representation here, do you not think that will steer us in the direction of more postgraduate representation?
Unfortunately, we're going to wrap it up for time constraints here. Really quickly,
Yeah, I'm just going to check.
Oh, yeah, Nick can go on. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Maureen, you want to ask that point?
Yeah, I think I'll let you ask first because mine is just to check.
No, I think, yeah, I will be very clear from our perspective, like, we're not trying to attack the union or the officers, like, I see the point you're making, I really understand it, because you feel like this is the best way forward. But I think where my frustration is coming from is just that we haven't been involved in this discussion. It's just been happening within the last 2 weeks. And I understand that you have the experience, but we also have the experience as postgrad students. And that's what I feel like we're not really getting at. And I'm willing to like have conversations if you let us talk about this. Let's involve us. Let's talk about this. But yeah, that's
I think this is why we're bringing it back in January, so we have more time to have those conversations to really understand each other more, not just, you know, we don't want to just spring this on you. That's not the case at all. But we did obviously listen in from that feedback, and which is why we decided to not vote on it today and move it forward, because that gives us more time to talk this through with you guys, discuss it, see how we can support you better, how we can represent you better, what else can we do to make you trust us a bit more, because I feel like there is a lack of trust there. And specifically as well, then when it comes to January, we will have a full parliament, so we'll also give them, the new members, a right to kind of feed into this matter and vote on this matter then.
okay,
Yeah.
good to move on. Yes, really quickly, do we need the officers have any updates? You wanna?
Are we doing a very quick, like, 3-minute update? Like speed.
Okay, so hi guys, my priorities are cost of living, student feedback and involvement, transparency in decision making, and community belonging, as with all officers. Cost of living wise, I hope you guys have tried the 3 soundbites of fake news, because that's something I and Tom have worked really, really hard on to lobby the university to offer. It makes them no money, but it is a really hearty meal. That is, you know, unlimited sides, unlimited salad from the salad bar, all for £3. You can actually feed yourself for an affordable price on campus at Committed Other Outlets. As well as that, we are working on a lot of proposals on lobbying the university to be able to tackle food insecurity, especially here. We've seen a massive increase in campus pantry usage, which has shown that students are basically not being able to feed themselves because of the cost of living crisis, and which is how we want to support them in that food insecurity, because that is the main point of focus currently. We are trying to work a lot on gathering feedback and how we close that feedback loop. We're working really closely with the university to get that in, feedback for all different areas, and be able to implement those things, you know, as soon as possible, and actually be able to tell you guys what has happened, what has changed, rather than just kind of like brush under the rug. In terms of community belonging, we've been hosting a lot of events, doing a lot of marketing on our social media, through our channels, to be able to be more visible as officers, be more visible as union, and to be able to foster communities within Kent itself for specific people, and how we support them. If you have any feedback, please do let me know. Thank you.
Okay, so my priorities this year are teaching quality and deadlines and workload, and obviously community and belonging. It's also for everyone.
And with one of my projects, I'm also kind of dabbling into the EDI priority as well. So first things when it comes to teaching quality, I relaunched the academic experience reporting tool with some tweaks to the questions to make sure that we're gathering more efficient and more accurate data that we're going to be using, not only for the strikes, which again, please let people know that that's available, but also in terms of feeding into teaching quality and how to improve the teaching experience at Kent. I'm also doing a revision of Kent Inclusive Practices. Can I just do a quick show of hands? Who knows what a Kent Inclusive Practice is? Okay. Well, you guys don't have. That's just asking students. So yeah, I'm doing a review with SSW about it. These are key practices that really are written into the policies and strategies of the university, but they're just not really applied. And these are practices like releasing materials with enough time in advance, making sure that lectures are recorded and have subtitles and captions on them, all that kind of stuff that makes learning more accessible, that they're actually applied. So we're going to be conducting an audit on that. Along with SSW, and hopefully we're going to be able to improve the experiences, particularly for those students that have ILPs in place. When it comes to student reps and academic societies, we are now on track to meet our yearly target of 400 student reps with somewhere around 300 to 350, which is really positive for this early on in the year. I'm trying to do as much training and as much rewarding for student reps as possible. We want them to be really effective at their job, but also we recognise as volunteers that they're doing this work unpaid, and it is extra workload, so we really appreciate them helping us improve the teaching quality and the experience for the peers. So we want to make sure that we are rewarding them not only with like nice hoodies and notebooks and all that kind of stuff, but also with events and masterclasses and upskilling. We are also trying to build more bridges between academic societies and the schools, because we've found that they are quite separate from each other when it comes to working with the union, the academic society and the school. So we want to build those bridges a lot better, and I'll let you know how that goes later on in the year. I'm also having a project around authentic assessment. You might know that last year I did some research on authentic assessments. I presented that over the summer to each division, and now I've gotten some funding from the Director of Education at the university to run the survey again more in depth to make sure that it's more representative, more accurate, and to feed into the assessment strategy that's going to be written early for next year. Then I've also worked last year on a late submission sliding scale, which Lewis was there for the consultation at Education and Academic Standards Committee. But you might know that at Kent, we're one of the very few universities that has a harsh zero mark when you submit a minute late after your deadline, whether it's like technical issues, wherever it might be. And we know that that's quite unfair, and we know that other universities create possibilities for students to be cut some slack basically and make sure that it's you know, a bit more of a healthy approach to deadlines and workload. So we've created a new policy that means that it's kind of staggered. So if you submit within 0 and 24 hours, you get cap mark of 60 as opposed to a direct 0. Then if it's between 24 to 48, you get capped at pass mark. And then if it's after 48, then only after 2 full days after the original deadline, you would get a 0. So it kind of helps students balance the workload a bit better. And hopefully that would have a positive impact on mental health. However, that was approved. The university is happy with that, but they want it to be an automatic process. And unfortunately, that can't be done through Kent Vision at the moment, because there's a lot of other really important projects that need to be worked on for Kent Vision. So I'm going to be putting out a petition very soon for students to show support for this policy to make sure that we can get the university to make it into priority and make sure that we actually put this policy in place quicker. And then finally, I want to talk about the Black Student Voices project, which is something that I'm really excited about. It's one of my babies. Tom also works on it with me. And it's a really exciting project where we're looking at the experience of Black students at Kent. We have secured some funding from the Student Success team. We are holding a lot of events. I've been working with ACS, Nigerian SOC, People of Colour Arts Society, as well as the Black Intellectual Societies, to kind of put on more events and more opportunities for students to connect with each other and really talk about their experiences to make sure that we are getting some really good recommendations and that we can improve their experience. That's it. Oh, obviously, there's other stuff that is not really priorities like TEF and access and participation plan, but that's really boring. So I'm not looking for anyone to read any panels. Yeah, comes in for any panel.
Yeah, you'll get more.
One thing to mention.
That's fine.
Just one thing really. I've never seen my full sort of autumn term report in a couple of weeks, so you can read that. But the most important thing for me is encouraging everyone, to fill out the cost of living survey. We've had 560 students fill it out in just a week. That we're aiming for much more. So please share amongst your networks. We'd love to see representation of postgrads, undergrads, and very diverse students as well. So please fill it out and share it. Contact me if you need any social media graphics or any further information. It's on the Kent Union website on the front.
Yes, Carol's going to.
You will also be able to see all of my work in my autumn term scrutiny report, which is coming out soon. The main thing I wanted to plug today is that I'm running a cultural food festival on Thursday, which is in 2 days' time, in Rutherford Dining Hall from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll be selling all the delicious cultural foods for £3 a meal or £7 for 3 meals, which is an absolute bargain. We've got loads of cultural societies that are going to be there, and this is something that we haven't done since 2019. So please do come to that. And if you have any questions for me at any time, do send me a message.
So I think it's very sort of sweet, just because we're very conscious of time, but it might come to highlight actually with the question of what are PG issues. So generally, my priorities are academic workload and success for PG students, community and belonging, and job opportunities, along with the overarching cost of living for the technically priority. So in terms of cost of living, we've secured a 10% UPR increase. We're all stipends that are funded, which is fantastic and a brilliant, easy start to the year. Generally outside of that, my 2 key projects at the moment revolve around PGR emails and a software called KeyTravel. So PGR emails, the reason there's a big problem with those is ultimately when you finish your studies, so this PhDs can usually last anywhere between 3 and 7 years. Their emails would close anywhere between 6 weeks to 6 months the second they submit their dissertation, which means all of their work that they've shared, all the contacts that they've built, anytime they use that email on a conference, whatever it may be, it just would go. Thankfully, with the help of the information services in the library, as well as the GRCs, the Graduate Research College, we've secured funding to implement a new system called Illuminati, just Alumni Arty, which will hold all those emails and allow PGR students and PhD students to hold access to them for the foreseeable future, eventually, so years at a time, so they won't lose that project. As for KeyTravel is an issue faced by about 3 to 4 of the division. Generally, it's NACS, CHEMS, HSS, and LSSJ. It's ultimately used to help them go to conferences, do any travel that they need to get to labs or other facilities, research facilities, archives, whatever it may be across the different countries. KeyTravel is, to put it lightly, it makes Kent Vision look good. It is horribly poor, it doesn't work, it's led to students having anywhere between £1,000 to £300 that they're waiting on for months. It is genuinely detrimental to some to the extent that they've had to apply for loans or go to additional overdraft payments, and it is currently literally crippling our PGR students. As for what's happening at the moment, there's mainly an investigation going into it. I'm collecting the students' data. Locally, some of the academic staff as well face issues with this, and they also come forward to support this proposal. Aside from that, 2 very quick things in community and belonging. The PG Summer will become a university-based project. I've been working with the head student experience at the university to basically make that a division-wide thing. So instead of just being a union-led initiative, this will be an entire university thing. It'll hopefully look like a kind of welcome week in summer for PGs over a couple of months instead of a week. The other side of that is, as I mentioned, the proposal, something that's already moving forward, is the PG Student Experience Committee. So currently there's the Student Experience Committee, which feeds into the Education and Student Experience Board, which feeds into the Senate, and so on and so forth. From the Student Experience Committee, there's going to be a subcommittee that is dedicated with academics, union members, and PG representation entirely to focus on the PG experience outside of academia. So there's obviously a focus with academia and a lot of things for PGs, but this will be focused just on the experience of students and making sure they're having a good time outside of that educational side. And that's a very brief overview. More on the scrutiny panel. Please come watch.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay, so just to save some threats for time, I'm not asking for a vote or anything on this. It's more of a bringing information towards the group. Quick survey first. Who knows what the Safe Maze program is run by the British Red Cross and Campus? Good, quite a few hands. Do you know what the Safe Maze program is? Yeah, so this thing. So we are a student peer-to-peer support group on campus run by the British Red Cross Society and supported by the Great British Red Cross. That means that we are generally staying out in front of the venue on a Wednesday night if the weather is acceptable between 9 and as late as 4 AM with drunk students, high students, unhappy students, students that want to talk, just having the option of talking to us or staying in our tent. The greater reason why I'm bringing this up is that we haven't been able to run the programme for the last month because of wind problems and also because of temperature problems. So this is a complaint that I was told to bring up by the Greater British Red Cross. There are only 2 universities in the entirety of the UK that run this programme, University of Kent and St George's University of London, I believe. St George's University has a room to work out of. Now that's not possible where we are in University of Kent. There are no rooms up to the venue or visible near the venue. However, it means that the programme there does not have to worry about the temperature, the rain or the wind. Whereas I'm probably going to have to cancel this Wednesday volunteering because the wind is heavy enough that if I literally don't hold the tent down, it will fly away. This is just a problem that should be brought up. There's also a series of problems with the fact that our jumpers are no longer as welcoming on the student campus as they might have been beforehand. I brought this problem up in a couple of times with the union. The union's been very helpful, but certain students are no longer willing to talk to people in red jumpers. Or if they are, they're thinking we represent a different society or we represent the union itself. So, for example, at the Freshers Week stands, we got quite a few people coming up and saying, are you union officers instead of are you students, even though we have a giant word in front and a name up here, or society name up there. That being said, yeah, it's not something I'm asking for any society to change their jumpers. It's just the fact that there are problems which should probably be notified of at least. One other thing, just as proof of what we do, even though it was an outlier. I'm not sure how many of you know, but we have successfully run one SafeNext program this year, in which there were 3 students who potentially needed an ambulance. So we are not useless, if that makes sense. Yes, questions or comments?
Yeah, first one was, do you want us to change our jumpers? Because we could.
As a member representing the British Red Cross, there is no suggestion for you to do that.
Okay.
As
a student
representing the British Red Cross, no either. The red jumper of the union is quite distinctive and able to actually get students' attention. It was good that students were coming up to people in red jumpers and asking for help. It was just unfortunate that it was the British Red Cross they were asking.
I was just joking anyway about
but that kind of position isn't so much that, it's more the awareness of the fact, much like we're worried about student awareness of what exactly the situation is for drunk students. For example, quite a few don't know how much it costs to get a taxi home after the venue if they identify you as drunk. Short answer, the cost is infinity, £200 or £60 if you're very lucky. Yes, if you need more details on that, please.
I guess one other thing that I wanted to do is ask you, how can we help? Like, in what way can we help? Is it a matter of, you know, the British Red Cross Society needs a new tent, or you need more weights, or you might need new jumpers. You might need someone to design your new jumpers.
Yeah, so we have jumpers and they are uniformed by the Red Cross themselves. Okay. They are paid for by the Red Cross, but they are at the end of their lives. For example, this one I'm wearing is a size too small and 3 years old. I've been doing this program for 3 and a bit years now. The tent itself is something we pay for with the union stipend that we get. So we replaced it last year. Hopefully it will last at least another year. But for example, we also bought a heater last year. We were allowed to use it 1 week, and then we were told not to use it the next week because the campus had changed its safety policy on electricity use. So, for example, potentially giving a window open in the arts building and giving one of us access into the arts building to plug it in might be useful. But that's just a random idea. I have no idea the feasibility of that itself. Yes, we got a couple of questions.
Well, regarding the taxi thing, so I mean, venue itself is super, like, not scratching the Red Cross talk. Venue itself is a unique nightclub in the sense that there's a campus one. So like, I've had experiences there where my friends have gotten in a very bad way, and they've got that little room to the side that they use like to calm people down.
In regards to that, I was with my friends in one of those, and they have like Disco Dave's number, and he's fine for you to puke because he's got a bucket. We love Disco Dave. But the other thing is that the university actually has a thing with Longleat's cabs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Where it's like the whole point is it's meant to get students home safely. So the idea that they shouldn't be able to get a taxi when they're drunk, I've got taxis when I've been actually spiked. Like if your friends are there and they can just calmly say to the taxi, and that was in town. But like if it's on campus, if it's with Longleats, surely it must extend to the fact that they are not in a good way and we need to get them home. And Longleats have a set price. This is why I think they were chosen. It's because they don't have after hours things, do they? It's like the same price during the day and the night.
So, starting with Disco Dave, the night I was talking about, he was driving back from Leicester. There was no way we were going to get a Disco Dave taxi there. There's only one of him. We get quite a few students at a time as well. It's that people come out of the venue and wait. So we only see nothing between 10 and 11, and then midnight we see a few 3W or so students come out nearly, a couple of hundreds, depends on the night. And there's only one Disco Dave. Going off that afterwards, there's also the fact that Longleats doesn't cab or make a cab line. We have to call them, and we don't have permission to call them quite often from students. And also, quite a few students don't have money on them. So Longleats does work potentially.
But the Longleats scheme, you're allowed to pay them back later.
Yeah, so we're allowed to do that as students, but we're not allowed to confirm on behalf of the drunk student, and the drunk student needs to be the one proposing that kind of idea. So there's a whole extra thing. And there's also the fact that all taxis have the right to refuse you if they think you're going to throw up in there, because it will take them off for the rest of the day, if not the next day as well. So that's the main problem, is that Longleats can be booked out. We have to look for another taxi, or Longleats just isn't around and we have to look for another taxi, who will then make you pay £200, £300 up front, which I doubt many people go partying on £200, £300 a month.
I have literally never heard of that.
That's part of the reason why I bring it up, because this is a common problem for us.
Yeah. Would it be useful for us to run a safe drinking campaign on?
I think there's the Safe Night Out campaign that will be happening.
So everything is useful. There's never anything that isn't useful unless it's misinformation. I sincerely doubt that would be misinformation. The bigger problem isn't so much that people don't safe drink. Quite a few people do, and quite a few people that are going out drinking quite a bit. They go out as a society, and society intend to keep safe eyes on them. But for example, we've had people leave the people they're supposed to be keeping an eye on in the venue, and they're not allowed back in, and then they just wander off. We've had one of the potential ambulance cases was a student who had been found unconscious in the toilets because the society completely forgot they existed. So it's not so much safe drinking as it is just safe practices in general, and keeping an eye on them. But there will always be people who get through, and for example, we haven't been able to run the tent for the last month or something. Well, I'm not suggesting we're God's gift to Earth and that we can do everything, but the statistics are there.
Just really quickly, I want to find solutions to be able to help you out really and truly, like that's the important thing. Does your tent need more weights to be able to do the wind?
So it's not so much more weights as it's just the fact that it is a dangerous wind. The tent in question is a marquee style tent, which we put 4 walls on, but the roof is stuck to the metal itself, and from there it just picks up. I believe there was a tent last year of the same design with no walls that got left alone at one point, and yes, it had no weights, but it got crashed into the Keynes building walls, remember that? Not Keynes, sorry, Rutherford. Yeah, it was Rutherford. So it's just a case of, if the wind gets to the point where I'm having to hold the tent down, which is around 15 miles per hour, I cancel the night.
I was just sort of gonna say, it's like a supplementary as well, like, one of the things that SafeMates does help with, because I've gone out on like 1 or 2 nights last year. When people are having a bad moment in venue, or, you know, they're not feeling well, I know that there are quite a few students that actively choose to go outside if they feel like they're going to be sick. You know, it's kind of like, I guess you could call it like a survival instinct. You know, you want to get out of the place, you want to have clean air, you want to be away from people, you know, and then obviously they can't go back in, but they're clearly not in a good way. So it's good just to have safe mates outside, because that is obviously like the most, you know, and like, you know, I know that safe mates are currently struggling with the amount of supplies that they actually have right now, because there's blankets that have gone walkabout, because obviously drunk people, they get covered in a blanket and then they migrate home. And then suddenly you're down a blanket, and there's no real way to keep students warm enough now, you know, with the supplies that they have, especially with the heating now compromised. So it's just kind of, yeah, it's just sort of like a little bit of supplementary.
Do you use fleece blankets or do you use foil ones?
So we had fleece on the list of items last year. They all got handed out within 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Even though we kept on telling people, if the Mac, drunk students are more likely to let something go. And I believe Nicholas, as our treasurer for the year, has been asked to check the finances so we can potentially make purchases on that. But yeah. Another question, Connor, again?
We're going to have to bring it to a close. Lulu, did you make your?
Well, do you have a point as well?
I'm gonna say, the closest building I can think of that might be suitable. I don't know if this would be possible, but like if someone could stand in, like if there's groups of you, if some of you can like stand in the actual venue bit, and then you could take turns to walk people down if they need help to Mandela. Or even perhaps the foyer of the KTB building, because that is big enough at the bottom of the stairwell at least to provide some level of cover.
So the problem is the fact that the volunteers need to be visible for students to come to us.
Which is why I said like if some people are waiting in the foyer.
The second problem is that under a Red Cross mandate, because volunteers have been assaulted when out of line of sight of the team leader, all volunteers must stay within line of sight of the team leader. And the team leader must be in a clearly visible position.
Can there only be one team leader?
There is only one right now, and that's me.
Yeah, but can there only be one?
If someone else trains up, that's perfectly good. Unfortunately, the current rules, but the current position is there is only one person.
I think this would be worth discussing post parliament. I think it's really important that we set up a meeting about this to actually have some time, you know, when people are not trying to go home, to like properly discuss this and give it the kind of weight and importance that it must have. Because the work that you guys do as volunteers is incredibly valuable. And thank you so much for keeping our students safe.
Lulu, should you make the last point?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it's worthy to explore because we can see that you're interested in discussing that, and it's kind of awkward that we have to end it right now. So if we end the discussion right now, it doesn't mean that it's end like forever. So we will extend it in some other platform.
Link in with you, Callum, and set up a meeting because I know I'm part of the Red Cross. We worked really well together last year as well, and then you know we worked and respected now massively. So we'll try to support you as much as we can and see how we can help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for wrapping up here and see you all at the next meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry that we ran over a bit, but thank you all for coming along.
That's basically like, isn't it? And I do. Like you would. Not like because I dread it. Like that might be so like public speaking. One moment. We just the roles of the pilot. Yeah.
I think like, well, state. Perhaps that.
Bring my mum. Should I steal the whole thing? Just take it late, innit? No, they're gonna kill me. Well, they're just not gonna like close your eyes. Scary? I'm going to take the whole thing. They're gonna feel bring in some of my mum. No, I'm going that way. Graduation.
I forgot it was Wednesday.
I was thinking it's like, it's not.
So, yeah,
All right. So we put some nachos. Sorry, I'll help myself.
Yeah, that's fine. We have.